Hey everybody, welcome to actually the very first episode of the American Conservative Movement's podcast. We're actually streaming live on Facebook right now, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to come to you guys directly with information from the founders of American Conservative Movement. Today it's actually going to be JD Rucker and myself. But what I wanted to do first is just let you guys know we are doing this podcast, the American Conservative Movement podcast. This is our way to come directly to you guys. You guys are actually the movement. We're not the movement. We're just trying to organize and trying to get information in front of you guys. You guys are actually the movement. So this is our opportunity to come directly to you guys, talk straight to you, let you know what's going on out there, and we'll be coming to you guys randomly whenever there's some bit of information, some news, something going on in politics, whatever it might be, but especially just to let you guys know what's going on out there in our country as we are trying to take back our country from the progressive, authoritarian, tyrannical leftists. So this is our way to come directly to you guys, talk directly to you, let you guys know what's going on. So this is actually going to be a podcast that is going to be on our brand new podcast network called Freedom First. This is a brand new network that I've started along with several other people. We're going to have a lot of great shows on here. Make sure you guys check that out on iTunes and that sort of thing. If you guys are listening to us on iTunes, make sure you subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, and leave a review. And just let everybody know how awesome you like and how awesome this podcast is for you and how much you like it. That definitely helps us as well. If you want more information on what we're doing here at the American Conservative Movement, you can go to AmericanConservativeMovement.com for more information. Sign up for our email list. Everything. We will keep you in the loop of what's going on. Today I wanted to bring to you guys our other co-founder, JD Rucker, and we're going to be breaking down some kind of shocking news, I guess I would say, about what's actually happening in our country and the potential for some really dangerous authoritarian stuff going on. JD, welcome to the ACM Podcast, very first episode, and glad we could do this and glad we can actually break down what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. We needed this. This is crazy. I don't know if you've read the bill, but it is insane. And if there was ever a need for us to launch a podcast on the fly, it would be now. If there was ever a time to go live to the Facebook audience, it would be now. So I would strongly encourage people, if you are watching, go ahead and share this out because patriots need to know about this. There's a very distinct reason why as well. And we'll cover that today, actually shortly.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the thing about this podcast that I just want to reiterate to everybody is that this is going to, we're going to be sprinkling this together with, maybe some random updates from, some of the co-founders. Every now and then we may do an interview with a prominent conservative voice. We may drop in some talks from our Saving America conferences. We've already done 2 of those. We've got another one coming up on May 30th, which is a Saturday. And we've had some great speakers. But again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to unify conservatives around a constitutional conservative message, and especially with the direction that it really seems like our country is heading right now with this coronavirus crisis. Having a podcast like this where we can actually get you guys the information you need to really help you in taking back our country, this is really our motivation for doing this. So this is vitally important. So, but JD, today we're going to be talking about this new House bill, the HR 6666, which in and of itself should be throwing up red flags everywhere. It's very apocalyptic, shall we say?
Sure, it's and I talked about it earlier today in the Knock Report podcast. This isn't. Let's not focus on the obvious Book of Revelation implications here. Yes, it's an odd number. It's strange that they would pick this one, maybe to draw attention to it, maybe to draw attention away from it. Say, oh, you guys think of this apocalypse, you Bible-believing morons, whatever. But this isn't the mark of the beast. Let's get that out of the way. It's just a rather oddity thing, but it might as well be the mark of the beast because this is such a measure that any patriot, anyone who reads between the lines, should be able to determine is a very bad thing. Unfortunately, a lot of us won't. A lot of people, from what I'm hearing, there's a lot of talk about, this is a big deal, but don't worry, President Trump would never sign it. It's never going to make it through the Senate. The Democrats are just throwing something up against the wall. So 2 things. First off, we can't assume that neither the Senate nor President Trump puts this through because it is a very populist bill. I mean, let's first explain what it is. So, in this bill, it's called the Trace Act, and it's essentially the government's way to push forward testing. Okay, just testing, right? That's what they're focusing on. Except it's more than that. It's also about contact tracing, which this is going. I'm noticing a lot more people talking about contact tracing as a method of essentially population control, which it is, and we'll get into that here shortly. But it's also about coming door to door and finding out are you guys infected? Have you been tested? If not, let's get you tested. Oh my goodness, you're sick, but your kid's not infected. Let's get your kid out to the local coronavirus quarantine center where we have people already hired to act as essentially daycare, but really just keeping you separated from them, or vice versa. Oh, look, you're not infected, but your kid's infected, or it doesn't matter whether you're infected. Your kid's infected. Let's get your kid out of here to a quarantine center. It is a populist move because it does promote the idea that we heard Dr. Fauci talking about today. It's essentially contact tracing and quarantining people as much as possible is replacing the notion of a vaccine. We're already hearing people saying, oh, we might not ever get a vaccine. It might take 2 years, 3 years, may never come. And so as a result, this is the replacement. And this is very dangerous. This is very bad. Okay. Part of the bill calls for localization of hiring. Okay. In other words, we're not going to hire 100,000 people and then fly them out across the country. We're going to find contractors, essentially. Contracting companies that are in local areas that they can then go out and hire people from the local area to essentially deputize them with these newfound coronavirus quarantine testing powers. Okay. It's dangerous. And the purpose of that, of course, is to make it seem less dangerous. These are your neighbors. They know you. They're not going to try to take away your kids. They're not going to try to isolate you, force you into a quarantine center, force you to be even more locked down than you already are, except that's exactly what this comes down to. One final point. They say it can't happen. The president would never sign it. Well, guess what? Even if it's not a standalone bill, even if this is it never makes it to his desk and never makes it past the Senate or whatever, and he's never given the opportunity to sign it. Even with all those things, they're still going to try to push it through. If you look at today's proposal, this $3 trillion proposal from Nancy Pelosi, it's ridiculous. Okay, and it does include, you guessed it, $75 billion for testing, contact tracing, and quarantine. So they took out the whole 66 aspect of it. They took out the whole Trace Act, okay, and they snuck a slightly smaller version. Okay, the main version was asked for 100 billion. This one asked for 75 billion. But they snuck it into their quote-unquote Heroes Act, which is they're going to try to get it passed. I'm already calling for Republicans to say no, calling for conservatives, fiscal conservatives, to say, whoa, $3 trillion. Are you serious? We just already put $2.7 trillion into this. You want another $3 trillion, including $1 trillion to go to the states, these states that have made irresponsible decisions and kept their economies locked down for so long? No, we don't think so. But guess what? It's probably still going to pass. Why? Because most Americans today want this. Most Americans today, the idea of $3 trillion doesn't faze them because it's so above and beyond anything that we've ever had to deal with in our lifetimes or any lifetime that it's like, oh yeah, it's just the government, they'll take care of it. Okay, no. This is really bad. It will take literally decades to pay back. If we were to go fiscally conservative as a nation, it would take decades to pay back this, what will end up being now $5.7 trillion with more on the way. Just to try to fix this coronavirus crisis, which frankly just doesn't seem like that big of a deal outside of nursing homes, right? Anyway, I'm sorry. I could rant all day. Just hop in.
Well,
calm me down.
No, well, I don't know if there is calming down on this one. But for me, looking at this, you're looking at. Well, okay, let's back up a little bit. This whole coronavirus crisis has really been. I mean, obviously, I think the majority of people, at least hopefully. At least let's say the sane people actually realize that this is like all overblown and taken way out of context and thrown all over the place, right? But what we're seeing is what really you and I have been warning about since the beginning of this crisis is people are going to be hijacking this and taking advantage of this in order to push their progressive agenda in a permanent sense as opposed to just a temporary fix. And we've seen this with Gavin Newsom. We're seeing this with the Democrats. We even saw it in the very beginning when Nancy Pelosi tried to sneak in funding for abortion and like just crazy things like that, right? And I feel like this act or this bill, this proposal is the modern day Patriot Act, where they're hiding it under the guise of we have to do this for safety. We have to do this in order to protect people. And what it'll do is it'll make some people feel like, yeah, you know what? They care about us. You know, they're actually going to come to our house. They're going to check on us. How nice is that? I mean, you know, previous governments, they didn't do that. They didn't come and check at our house. But you do realize what they're actually doing is they're systematically taking away our constitutional rights. We're literally heading towards the direction of being no better than China if we keep going down this route of government authoritarianism. And if this was a year or two ago, I would be like, okay, you're a conspiracy theorist if you're saying that we're getting close to China. But literally, we're coming down to the fact of, no, like, we literally have no more rights. That's the crazy thing in all this. Where did our rights go? JD, I'll pose the question to you. Where did our rights go?
They are still there. We've just been blocked from them. And thankfully, you know, a lot of people are starting to speak out. We've seen the protests over the last month and a half. We've seen people posting online. We've seen people, civil disobedience, restaurants opening all the time. You know, and some of them are getting slapped back down. We're even seeing some police. There was a couple of posts, and I'll put them in the show notes. There were a couple of videos from various law enforcement officers. The chief, Santa Fe police force, he went out there and he said, how am I supposed to get trust of the people if I'm sitting here letting actual real criminals go, but then you expect us to arrest people because they're out and about going to visit family members or, you know, going to the beach or whatever. You know, this isn't the way that it's supposed to be. And then there was a gentleman, I'll get his name. I think his name is Greg Anderson.
Yep.
Please correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe you're correct.
But
yeah.
Greg Anderson. Yeah, up in Seattle, I think it was. You know, he got fired because he made a video saying, "Look, guys, if you're a cop like me, don't do this because this is crazy. What are we doing? You know, we have a responsibility to defend rights. Just because our sergeant or our police chief or the mayor or the governor says that we're supposed to essentially break the law and break the Constitution by doing these things, you know." What are we doing? We don't have that obligation. We should be fighting against it. And they put him on administrative leave, you know. So, but here's the thing: is that kudos to him, kudos to the mayor or to the police chief of San Jose, kudos to the restaurant owners who are opening up, the businesses, the barbers, you know, the salon owners, Shelley Luther down in Dallas. Kudos to those who are protesting. This is how we get them back. You know, you ask where our rights are; they are still in the exact same spot. But the left and even some on the right have used the coronavirus to put a smokescreen around it, to bluff essentially and say, look, you know, you have these rights temporarily rescinded, and that's not how these things work. Okay, there are certain things that they can do. They can say, for example, you can't go to the beach. That's within their right. I know it stinks, especially out here in California. But they really can't constitutionally say you cannot gather for church, for example. Those are things that are protected by the Constitution. And our ability to for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, they're trying to go after all three of them with these draconian mandates. You know, they are going after life. People say, well, no, they're trying to save life. No. I mean, if you look at the actual numbers, you look at the people who are, for example, cancer patients who aren't being able to get to see their doctor because it's technically, not coronavirus and it's not an emergency. They can get their treatment in a month, 2 months, 5 months, whatever. Well, some of them are dying. You have the emotional effects. You have people committing suicide. I saw one report that said these suicide hotlines are up 1,000% because of this, because people are stuck at home. They're running out of money. They're becoming dependent on government. And some people aren't dependent on government. Yeah, I'm still trying to sort through this thing. I haven't gotten a check yet. Okay, I'm still like, wait a second, everybody else is getting check. Why haven't I gotten my check? I'm trying to go to the government website. It breaks, but I haven't really pushed too hard because, I mean, I'll take it because it's there. But I'm not, as a conservative, I'm really not interested in taking that money. The only reason that I would is because if it's already allotted, it's what's the difference if it's going to go to me or it's going to go back to the government coffers where they're wasted otherwise. Anyway, point being is that you ask a very simple question and it should be a simple answer, but unfortunately all of us are making it more complicated than it should be.
Absolutely. And so, I kind of want to take it back directly to this bill. And, literally it's like they're giving the government power to literally come in and quarantine you if you have this disease or this virus. We'll call it a virus because it's what it is. If you have this virus that has such a low death rate and more, and actually, it's like, well, we're going to protect the kids, right? We're protecting the children. But if you actually look at the death rates, you actually look at the mortality rates and all that kind of stuff for people if you're under the age of 20, I mean, it's almost zero. And so who really are we protecting? Like, we should be protecting the older people. We should be protecting the people in the nursing homes and retirement homes and things like that. Like, and I'm not saying it's going to sound awful that we're saying, oh, don't protect the kids. But what if the kids don't need protection? Like, that's the thing. Why are we protecting people who don't need it when in reality we are allowing people who do need protection to go free and catch the virus themselves? It just seems like this is totally backwards. Right. So looking at this from your perspective, what are the constitutional rights that are being taken away with this bill?
So that's a very long answer because here's the thing, and I'll keep it short. Don't worry. Here's the thing: people will often throw out the notion that, my constitutional rights are being taken. Constitutional rights are being taken. So in most cases, technically, they're not. Okay, like I said, I mentioned the beaches earlier. There was a lot of people that were waving around constitutions saying they have the constitutional right to go to the beach. That is operated by the state. Okay, no, they don't. Okay, the state does have the right to close those beaches down. A lot of people are saying, I have a constitutional right to not wear masks and to be able to go wherever I please. And I look at those, I look at these people sometimes and I think, okay, so they're saying that I have the constitutional right to not wear a mask, but the store owner who owns the store that I'm going into, well, they don't have the constitutional right to say that I must wear a mask to enter. It's like, no, you guys are fighting the wrong battle here. Okay, so there's a lot of this is constitutional, that's constitutional when it really isn't. Now, to directly answer your question, what constitutional rights are being taken? What is being suppressed essentially? Most of this goes back to, I don't want to get too technical on this because we can go into the 4th, 14th, and 10th Amendment and break those down. We can also look at portions of the First Amendment that are being taken. But I think the main objective here, what we need to understand, is that our right to live as we need to see fit, our right to make a living, our right to not be dependent on government, our right to move about the country, to open our businesses as we choose. These aren't rights that are even necessarily protected by the Constitution. These are natural rights. These are rights as humans. Whether you're a Christian who believes that these rights were given to us by God, or you're not a Christian or not a Judeo-Christian believer who thinks that these rights are natural rights that are just inherent to being human. Either way, these do supersede, not legally, but in the United States, but these do supersede our constitutional rights. So we have to look at this from that perspective. What should we be able to do? Should we be able to, for example, social distance properly in our establishment and take precautions, wearing gloves, wearing masks, having hand sanitizer, whatever, and open our business? Yes, we should. Should we be able to do all of that without the precautions? In other words, should we be able to open up our business and not social distance and not have masks and not do anything that the government's recommending? Yes. We should have that right, because here's the thing. Nobody's forced to go to that place. If I'm a social distancer and I like to wear a mask wherever I go to make sure that I don't get sick, so I don't get my 2-year-old sick. That's my prerogative. In which case, I'm not going to go get my hair cut at a salon where they're not wearing masks or gloves, right? I have that choice. And the salon owner should have that. I keep saying we have that choice. We don't, not here in California, but we should have those choices. Just because a lockdown is rescinded doesn't mean that those who are on lockdown are suddenly forced. Nobody's going to come knocking on your door with a gun and saying, go outside now, go hug people. That's not how it works. Okay, if people choose to do things that might get them infected here in America, in the United States, that is their right. Okay, this isn't something where people say, but you're going to kill grandma, you're going to hurt other people. Well, that's debatable. Dr. Rand Paul, and let's make sure we're clear about this. Dr. Rand Paul took on Dr. Fauci today in the Senate, and he said, basically there are conflicting views to what you're saying. He invoked the Swedish model, which, as a funny story, I wanted to be very clear about, because I know Sweden didn't do a lockdown. Their death rate is slightly higher than ours, okay? But then their herd immunity is probably already established at this point. So they have less to worry about than we do in the long term. Anyway, just as a quick side note, when Rand Paul told us, he started invoking the Swedish model, I did a Google search for Swedish model. And I got pictures of Swedish models. Okay, so I thought it was funny. Anyway, it was odd. I was like, oh, crap, that's not what I wanted. Anyway, so he did invoke the Swedish model, and he is correct. We did an interview on the Knock Report podcast of Dr. David Samadi, who is essentially saying the exact same things. Okay, he's really pushing for herd immunity. We've all heard about Dr. Dan Erickson, pushing for herd immunity. Those of us who've seen the movie Plandemic, which I don't know if we're supposed to say that on Facebook Live because they're going to now censor us, but I'm going to go ahead and say it.
Let's wait. Give it a few seconds. Are we still here? Yeah, we're still here. Okay, we're good.
Pandemic with an L. Those of us who have seen that, it's pretty startling stuff, and it does raise questions. Before that movie, or before that I guess preview of the movie, I already had questions about Fauci. The more that I look into him, the more that I realize I don't think that he's just greedy. I don't think that he's just being overly careful. I don't think that it's about his patents. I don't think that it's about his moment of fame. I now believe this, and this is not endorsed by the American conservative movement. This is J.D. Rucker's personal belief. I think that Dr. Fauci is literally trying to destroy America to some extent, whether it's for the Democrats to try to get Trump out of the way, revelations today that he was a humongous Clinton supporter, whether it's for China and the World Health Organization, for whatever reason, he's doing it. I do believe that Dr. Fauci is working against us. The sheer fact that he recommended hydroxychloroquine back in 2005 for SARS-1, and now all of a sudden he's pretending like he doesn't even know what it is, and he needs to see a lot more studies for a drug that has been tested for the last 70 years. Not sure what, it should be blatant to everybody. He is not on our side. He is not on the side of America. He's not trying to make things better. He is doing something bad, and I don't know what his motives are, but he shouldn't be there where he is now. I know I took this to a very dark place, but go ahead and cut me off.
Let's keep going down this Fauci route because that's been what's fascinating to me is, I saw his little bit of back and forth with Rand Paul today. And what I found interesting about his response to Rand Paul was, it seemed to me like he was acknowledging, okay, there's differing reports and differing opinions that are out there and that sort of thing. But it's almost like he was trying to take this moral high ground of, I'm not going to recommend that we rush back into, the economy, opening up the economy because there could be some serious deaths and like all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, if you don't think that there is the necessary statistics and documentation, why did you recommend we shut everything down? So there's this inconsistency there that to me is showing there's got to be something else going on. And again, it's one of those things. I always hate going conspiratorial or opposing theories without evidence or something along those lines. At the same time, we can also ask questions. we can ask questions and we can see where does that lead. We don't jump to conclusions before we get the answers, but we still need to ask the questions, see where those questions lie. And with Fauci, it seems like there's way too many inconsistencies. There's some definite ties that he's got to that lab that's going on in China. There's some definite direct ties to other organizations and people that are, very influential in all of this that make me question him and his judgment. And why are we still listening to him? And that's one of my biggest concerns with Fauci, is that it seems like he doesn't necessarily have our best interests at heart.
I agree. And the thing that during that I think a lot of people were talking about, Rand Paul saying that you're not the end all be all, and Fauci said, no, I agree, and this, that, or the other. There was something at the end of that portion of his testimony that caught my attention, and it ties into this whole HR 6666. It ties into this notion that the vaccine push is probably not going to work for the left. And that's this notion of pushing for contact tracing and child quarantine and all this other stuff. Notice that he switched gears and he started talking about how the data isn't in yet about how it affects children. We're here saying that the children don't get affected very often. Okay, and that would run contrary to things such as, for example, in Washington State, they were hiring, up until last night, they were attempting to hire people to essentially be daycare workers. Okay, there's no legislation this matches. They just went out and requested to hire people, high-paid people, to work 12-hour shifts, 4 days a week, 4 days in a row, 3 days off, so that 24 hours a day they would be able to maintain these coronavirus quarantine centers. Okay, again, like I said, there's no legislation for this yet. There's no executive order for this yet, but they're getting ready, and they're already putting out these hires on the boards. This is directly attached to either the localized variation of or the national HR 6666. So then the question becomes, well, if kids aren't being affected, which apparently they're not, then what's the motivation for this? How are they going to sell this? Enter stage left, Dr. Fauci, who's all of a sudden talking about Kawasaki syndrome. Okay, people are saying, I've never heard about that, and he's out there saying, look, the coronavirus, COVID-19, it's starting to react in children in ways that we hadn't seen before. It's starting to act like Kawasaki syndrome, and I could practically hear the dum dum dum, the dramatic music comes on and he stares into the camera, and he does his eyebrow thing, this it really bugs me. Bottom line is that to me was the clincher. When I thought, okay, so is he just out doing this for the fame? Is he just doing this for the money? Is he actually, conspiring with someone? Okay, when he starts busting out Kawasaki syndrome on national television in front of the Senate and getting people to look into this and scaring people into thinking, okay, so granted, there's only one out of literally every 150,000 children who are infected by coronavirus that die, but it's not just about deaths now. It's about this other stuff, and oh my gosh, we're killing the children, So we've got to push forward this legislation that's going to force testing, force people to knock on your door, have your neighbors deputized to knock on your door, and they would then determine, are you suitable? Are you capable of raising your child because of whether or not you are infected with the coronavirus? Even amongst healthy people, even when you include the numbers from the elderly and the sick, we're talking about 1 or 2 out of every 10,000 infected people who die from this. People say, well, no, that's not the numbers that I'm hearing. I look at the CDC. Well, those are based upon confirmed cases. When you look at the infectious mortality rate, that is exponentially lower than anything we see. This is really, it's not a killer. Don't get me wrong, it is a killer. I shouldn't say it's not a killer. It definitely is a killer, especially for the elderly and the infirm. All right? But why are we destroying both our economy and our own rights and making it to where we won't be able to recover? The longer this lasts, the closer we're getting to that point of no return where there will not be a United States of America when all is said and done. Why do we keep pushing this for a disease that does not seem to be as dangerous as as everybody's saying it is, unless except for this isolated group of people who have pre-existing conditions, especially lung conditions, or that are over the age of 65, 70, 75, or whatever. Quarantine the nursing homes. Help the people. If you're of a certain age, or if you have certain ailments, okay, you can request help. Let the rest of us go back to work. Yeah, are we going to catch the coronavirus? Yeah, probably, because it is very infectious. Especially over time, are we probably going to get it as younger than 65 out in the workforce or out at the store or eating at a restaurant? Yes, we're probably going to catch it. And most of us, the vast majority of us, won't even know it because the infections will not manifest. These are the facts, folks. These are undisputed, even by the left. That's buried by the left. They're not talking about it because it goes against their narrative of fear and doom and gloom and economic shutdown and fire and brimstone and Book of Revelation, Mark of the Beast, all this stuff. But they don't deny any of it because it's out there. It's facts.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing is that before today, I never heard of Fauci mentioning this other syndrome that is, surprisingly, we're just now realizing is affecting kids. I mean, it seems like it's brand new information, and it seems to me that that he used to rip on Trump for putting out things that he would hear about coronavirus or cures or something like that without validated evidence. And the thing that he would always say is, well, we have to wait for the scientific testing. We have to wait for the medical testing to be able to verify anything before we actually say that it's a cure or something's going on, right? So that would take years of study in order to come to that logical conclusion. If you're going to follow his logic that condition that he placed on President Trump. Well, now he's putting out this theory based on something that he heard, not scientifically, not going through scientific testing and seeing, is coronavirus actually doing this? He puts out this scare tactic. That's really what it is, a scare tactic of some unverified report. As far as I know, I haven't seen any report actually scientifically stating that this is what's happening in response to coronavirus. And then all of a sudden now we're supposed to be like, yes, come take our children away because this is the only way to keep them safe. Like, where did we become this crazy nation where we're so gullible and just stop asking questions and then just completely rely on experts that are hypocritically putting out double standards?
Right. Where did we? I don't know. I mean, I would never have expected it. I was so wrong about America. I hate to say it. I don't want to be insulting, but I see it on Twitter. I see it on Facebook. I see it everywhere. These are many people that I've respected and trusted are echoing the same rhetoric. They're throwing up Dr. Fauci quotes. They're saying stuff like, lockdown until it's safe. And I'm thinking, life isn't safe, generally speaking. Okay, there's a line in the movie Heat with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, where he mentions the Pacino character mentions, you get killed walking your doggy. And of course, he says it in a much more Pacino way. I was on the verge of doing an impression, but I thought I better not embarrass myself, But he's right. You can get killed walking your dog. You can get killed driving to the store. You can get killed from a meteor strike. Okay, there are many ways for us to die. The coronavirus isn't anywhere near the top of the list. The coronavirus, I'm not saying it's a hoax. Okay, it's obviously real. There are many people, hundreds of thousands of people who can tell us that yes, it is real and it does kill because their relatives have died from it. I think what are we up to 80,000 deaths in the United States so far? It's bad. Okay, this isn't good. This isn't a good thing. But and it's not a hoax. But with that said, how many more people would have died if we kept the economy open? How many more people would have died if we, quarantined just the sick and elderly? What if we put our focus from the beginning on nursing homes, on people who are elderly and staying at home? Maybe they're not in nursing homes, but they, what if we said, look, this is most dangerous to them, so we have to do everything we can to protect them, and here's how. Let's quarantine them. If they need medical assistance, let's get tests out. The people that should be getting tested are those people and anybody who's around those people. Okay. Again, we're getting into the weeds here.
Right.
And it's very easy to do that.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing too, and this is what I want to put out there, and then we can kind of come back to the bill a little bit too. But the thing is that a lot of doctors have talked about herd immunity, and in fact, even the left have been talking about herd immunity. And the weird thing that they're saying is that we're going to be in lockdown until we get to herd immunity. That, like Gavin Newsom was saying, like, not only do we need a vaccine, but we also need to get to herd immunity. So we're going to stunt our ability to get to herd immunity in order to get to herd immunity. Number one, that's absolutely ridiculous. But then the question is, had we taken your position right there, where you are saying, let's quarantine those that are vulnerable. So that would be people in nursing homes. That would be people in retirement communities. That would be people over a certain age with certain, medical conditions like, diabetes, we know, obesity, cancer, certain things. It's like, those are the kinds of things we could literally, identify and say, we got to protect these people, right? And then send out all the healthy people out, the people who are more than likely not going to die from this because statistically speaking, they're not. And then, magically we get to herd immunity because we got the right people to catch coronavirus, and we kept the people who are vulnerable to dying from this thing safe. And then, who knows, we could have already reached herd immunity at this point with how contagious this thing is if we would have just taken this route, not destroy everybody's lives by shutting down the economy, not taking away everybody's constitutional rights, and in all reality, it seems like attempting to permanently take away people's constitutional rights in order to supposedly beat this thing using faulty data, using faulty statistics, and scare tactics like what Fauci was using today. It seems like that would have been the more logical way to go about all this.
Not just logical. This would have been people talk about, you want to kill grandma. Guess what? The best way to not kill grandma is to keep her isolated while the rest of us, as you said, get our herd immunity. Because once we have herd immunity, we have antibodies that will fight the coronavirus, which means that we can go to grandma's house, however long it is. I'm sure they would figure it out. Okay, so once you've caught the we've done our calculations. There's two types of antibodies. The initial antibody that comes out when you're first infected, that's the attack dog antibody, and I think is how it was described to me. And then there's a secondary form of antibody that stays in your system essentially indefinitely, and that's the antibody that looks for the coronavirus and will attack it, as soon as it appears. So in other words, we would have kept grandma safer by catching the coronavirus, suffering through it, whether that's we're asymptomatic. We're lucky, we're blessed to not have anything. Maybe we go through a hard time, like Chris Cuomo. Chris Cuomo was locked up in his basement for 2 weeks, and man, I mean, he was talking about how he was hallucinating and how he totally didn't go out of his house and go jogging, even though he was caught on camera out of whatever. Let's
no.
It wasn't him, though.
But you got to remember. So what he was doing was actually holographic projection through AI, so that way he could simulate being out in public. I'm just saying.
You almost coronavirus choked me right there with that. So yeah, I mean, maybe we get sick, but we do it because of grandma, not because we're trying to kill grandma. We do it so that we can save grandma, because now we can go bring her medicine. We can go help her, pick her up if she's fallen and she can't get up. We can do all these various things that we can't do today, because guess what? We don't know if we have the antibodies or not. Now, granted, the recent studies, especially at the end of April, were showing that a good chunk of people, as many as 21% in New York City alone, have the antibodies. They have been infected and they recovered. And most of the people are like, oh, what, really? I already had it? I don't remember having it. It's probably because, it didn't show up. You remember that headache you had for about 6 hours the other night? Yeah, that was the coronavirus. You fought it. Remember you had a fever for a day? That was the coronavirus. Your body fought it. The body fights the coronavirus pretty easily, in most people, unless they are elderly or unhealthy. For the rest of us, we have a 1 in very tiny, tiny chance of dying from the coronavirus. And apparently, according to these studies, there's even a very small chance that we'll suffer significant symptoms from it. So, I hate to insult politicians that I admire or pundits that I admire, and I would have to put myself into that category. Not that I admire myself, but who I was one of the people that also got it wrong in the beginning. I was back in January saying, "Oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible." I was trying to raise the alarm bell. Nobody's talking about coronavirus. Forget impeachment. Let's talk about coronavirus. This is terrible. This is going to kill us. And then come March 16th, your birthday, we were. That's when the president announced the lockdown, and it's like, okay, 2 weeks. Okay, yeah, we can deal with 2 weeks. And then it became, okay, another 2 weeks. This is not good. And then it started to extend longer, and then states started taking it out longer. And now you got Los Angeles saying they're going to be shut down until at least July. And I'm thinking to myself, how many homeless people in Los Angeles are there today? How many homeless people are there going to be in Los Angeles in June or July? Because it's going to get really bad there. Los Angeles isn't the type of city that can be locked down. Most cities aren't. But, you could get away. If you're in Guthrie, Oklahoma, you could probably survive a lockdown because, number one, the police are going to let you go ahead and they're going to take care of you. The community's going to take care of you if you run out of stuff. In Los Angeles, that's just not going to happen, okay? It's just not going to happen. It's dog eat dog there, man.
Well, and also the thing that people in, let's say, the Midwest and the South oftentimes don't realize about New York, LA, some of these bigger cities is like when you live in a small town, your neighbors for the most part. When you're in LA,
yeah.
You don't know who lives next door to you. Like that's just the reality of living out here in California. Is you're like lucky if you could name the person who lives across the apartment hallway from you. Like that's the crazy thing about this. So if the entire state is shut down and you run out of food, like you're gonna go knock on your neighbor's door and like, hey, do you have any food? And it's like, who are you? Like you're a stranger. Like that's the thing that you have to understand about California is this isn't a very like social place where you're like social with your neighbors. It's a totally different world.
Mm-hmm. I've waved at both neighbors on both sides of us.
That is much better than most Californians. I'm just saying.
Well, they've actually waved back. I was impressed.
Impressive.
I have no idea their names. I couldn't even tell you how many people are living in either side, but I have waved at them and they have waved back. I smiled at one the other day. She smiled at me.
Nice.
So
nice.
So I was able to smile back. Yeah.
So looking at this bill, is this something that is a temporary thing or is this indefinite?
So the $100 million that is being set aside or would be set aside if the bill passes, or the $75 billion if you count what's being pushed through in the HEROES Act from Nancy Pelosi. This money is for fiscal year. I'm not sorry, fiscal year for actual year 2020. So that's till the end of the year. At least I haven't seen the Pelosi version, but the Traces Act, the Trace Act, leaves it open-ended. In other words, this can be extended, and there's really no limit to how much it would cost. So they start off with $100 billion, and they could determine in January 1 that $100 billion wasn't nearly enough. So for 2021. We expect this to have a resurgence, or it is having a second wave, and we expect a third wave, and oh my gosh, coronavirus, Dr. Fauci, coronavirus, and so they start saying, this time we need $500 billion, and or $1 trillion. Let's just make it around trillion. We've been throwing around trillions for the first time in the history of the United States. Let's go ahead and do it again. Why not? It's for the children. If we only save one life,
just
with
one
$1 trillion,
just one
life, then it was totally worth it. I'm sick of hearing it.
Could you imagine if you were that one life and you realize that it cost $1 trillion just for you?
Take me. Hey, tell you what. Give half of that to my family and let me go. Praise God. Take me now. It's my time. No. It's not about just saving one life, and we are not all just in this together. We are the phrase I like to hear. I've heard it a couple times. People say we're all in the same boat. No, we're not. Okay, we're all in the same storm, but we're all in different boats right now. Okay, Nancy Pelosi's ice cream boat is very different from the Rucker household boat. Okay, the boats of the Rucker household boat is very different from the people in Los Angeles who have nothing right now. Okay.
And that was intentionally set up by the founding fathers in the sense of we're all supposed to be individuals. They did not see us as a big group that we have to be treating. Not that everybody has to have the same outcomes. Like the founding fathers set this up for personal responsibility, and that's the thing that's frustrating in all of this, is that our leadership is not talking about that at all.
No, they're not. They don't want to, because it's the unfortunate part, and one of the reasons that we've formed the American conservative movement in the first place is because conservatism is completely misunderstood. There's been a decade's worth of indoctrination in schools, decades worth of propaganda coming from both mainstream media and Hollywood. And I would say that Hollywood, it's been a while. Mainstream media, it's really more recent. They've come out. They at least try to adhere to some form of unbias for a while, but now it doesn't. All subterfuge is gone. So they won't talk about it. Not even most Republicans won't talk about things like personal responsibility. They won't talk about, except during election time if they're a Republican, they won't talk about self-reliance, self-governance. These are issues that only pop around, at least for Republicans, around election time, and it never pops around for Democrats. The reason being is that it's only popular to actual conservatives, and in reality, it's the best approach. One of the things that I think gets understood in the debate between collectivism and individualism is that collectivism is worse for the individual and the collective, whereas individualism has demonstrated, just look at the United States. We were built on individualism, and it made us strong. And it's the push towards collectivism is making us weak. Individualism is better for the individual, and it's better for the collective as a result. Okay, the ideas of socialism that are becoming so popular because people have forgotten how bad it is, or they've been brainwashed into thinking that it's never been tried and it's not being tried right now. And they think that this is what they're doing in Norway and Sweden. It's not. Even Norway and Sweden said, well, I don't know what you guys are talking about. So the bottom line is this, to answer your question directly. Nobody's talking about it because nobody's talking about it. And that's why the American conservative movement needs to get that conversation started. We need to start educating people. Instead of just saying, oh, well, there's a better way to say it, instead of talking about things because people don't want to talk about their own responsibilities, not in 2020. Well, we need them to. We need people to start taking responsibility. We need people to stop relying on government, relying on anybody other than themselves to get things done. And that's why, when I look at these actions by these police officers who are starting to speak out, when I look at the protesters, when I look at people who are opening up their businesses, even getting these businesses then subsequently shut down by the government because they weren't supposed to open it, we have to keep fighting. We absolutely have to, because I've often said, freedom won't defend itself. That has never been more true than as of May 12th, 2020, and going forward indefinitely until the battle is finally won.
Yeah. Now looking forward, and we see we've got this bill. Let's say it passes. It comes onto Trump's desk. Let's say he signs it into law. Number one, what are the odds? What do you think the odds are that he would sign something like this into law? And number two, what are the repercussions, and do you feel like we could recover from this?
Okay. Number one, yes, he would sign it. There's a very good chance he would sign it. His advisors would tell him to. Okay. Because in an election year, you don't want to be the guy that says, quote unquote, no to science. Unfortunately, the left has control of most of mainstream media. And as a result, reality doesn't always come out. I mean, look at Obama. Look, the best example, if anybody wants to see, look at the first month after Tara Reade, came out with her allegation against Joe Biden. It was silence. It wasn't until a bunch of people were saying, look, report on this. I found myself saying, here, who was it? Anderson Cooper. Anderson Cooper had E. Jean Carroll. I don't know if you remember her. She was the crazy lady that said that Trump sexually assaulted her in a dressing room, and then she went on. Anderson Cooper had her on in a minute, okay? And she went on there and she was saying stuff like, oh, rape is sexy. And then all of a sudden Anderson Cooper's like, oh, let's cut the break, right? Did he have Tara Reid on? No. Didn't invite her. Didn't talk about her. She got no coverage. The only reason that she was even covered at all is because conservatives and patriots forced the hand. We wouldn't let it go. And the same thing has to happen with this, because President Trump is going to be faced with a bill. If it hits his desk, it's going to be a bill that will have a lot of support from the House, okay, majority support from the House for sure. And there will probably be 3 or 4 or 5 Republicans, maybe a lot more than that, who side with the Democrats to get the bill passed. When it hits his desk, his advisors, a lot of them, are going to be saying, Mr. President, if you veto this, they're going to destroy you electorally. You will not win the election if you do this. Now you ask, how do we change that? Well, the president, thankfully, listens to his base. He had advisors telling him back in August of 2016 that, you need to have a softening and you need to start pushing for amnesty. And so he did. For about a week and a half, he and Sean Hannity went on tour, basically, trying to push the idea of let's go ahead and grant amnesty in exchange for the wall, basically. And his base, conservatives, were like, no. We were literally screaming, no, don't do this, don't do this. You've been promising this whole time, don't do that. Just do a search for the softening. That might be another bad one that comes up wrong on Google. Anyway, and then when the gun debate happened, after all those shootings in the summer, mass shootings, and people were talking about gun control, he started saying, yeah, we're going to put something together. Maybe looking at this, looking at that, looking at universal background checks. Mitch McConnell's like, all right, we're finally going to be able to get the universal background checks in there and maybe get some red flag laws, and then, but the base, we were like, no. And we were loud about it. And within about a week and a half, 2 weeks, all of a sudden he's like, yeah, I don't think we're going to be doing that gun control. I know I said we were, but I think we're not going to. So we didn't. This is what needs to happen with H.R. 6666, the Trace Act. This is what needs to happen with that portion of the HEROES bill. And that's, at the end of the day, the HEROES Act, that's where it's probably going to get snuck in. And so we're going to be faced with it. Now, you asked, can we recover from this? Is this going to destroy us? Yes, but it's going to happen at the local level. The strength and weakness of this bill is that it is localized. Okay, the money starts in D.C., but it then gets sent out through contractors. They identify companies at the local level who are able to fulfill their needs, who can get the training, who are willing to hire the people, who understand, the logistics. These are basically, the equivalent of military contractors, or you can call them law enforcement contractors, in the guise of healthcare contractors. So how do we defeat that? That's when it becomes local. That's when it becomes, okay, your community, you identify which companies they are. Okay, and you inform those companies. You get your neighbors alerted. Okay, when they come knocking on the door, don't answer. Okay, if you want to get tested, great, because there's 2 parts to this. There's 2 parts. There's one that's the mobile operation. The other part is the door-to-door. The in-home operation. Decline the in-home. Go door to door, or go to the mobile operation if you want to be tested. But there's a risk even in that, because once you're registered, okay, you got your test. Oh, looks like you have coronavirus. Guess what? We now need to have everybody, names and addresses and phone numbers of everybody you've been in contact with for such and such time. And I don't know what the repercussions are from that if you were to decline. Okay, if you were to decline contact tracing, and over the next few weeks, mark my words, we're going to hear contact tracing 150 times. Wait for Bill Gates is going to be talking about it. Dr. Fauci is going to be talking about it. The Democrats are going to be talking about it. Everybody in mainstream media is going to be talking about it. This is the push to get this variation of the Trace Act out there. Okay, so we're going to have to work. I mean, this is going to have to be dynamic. The American conservative movement is going to have to analyze exactly what's happening if and when it passes, and then come to a conclusion, come to determinations on how we can help the people to fight back, because we're going to have to. We have to fight back.
Yeah, and I've had friends that have considered getting the antibody testing or getting different testing done, and they're one of the things was like, but the thing is that in order to get this done, it's like we have to provide name, address, like all of our contact information, where we live, and it's like that's a red flag. It's like the gun registry. It's like it's dangerous, because now in the future they can decide, oh, we got to round everybody up. And they'll come up with some reason in order to do that. And that's the dangerous thing about this is that we should want the testing because we want to be able to keep ourselves safe. But we can't get the testing without the potential for being rounded up and quarantined and separated from our family, or having our children being taken away from us. So now we're in this catch-22 of, number one, we want to know, are we safe? Do we have the antibodies in us? Are we able to go out and about and be safe? But at the same time, you're trading your freedom for safety, which seems totally back. It's absolutely insane.
It is. So if you can, I would suggest finding, there's going to be doctors out there. I know this because I happen to have one. There will be doctors out there. My guy's a libertarian all day. So he got us tested without going through the normal stuff. I don't want to out him. I don't want to get him in trouble. But bottom line is that we're going to have to find this. It's insane that we're in the United States of America in 2020, and we're talking about trying to find underground black market doctors who are willing to get us antibody tests and not report us to the government. But that's where we're heading. And folks, this should terrify you, okay? But this should also infuriate you. And most importantly, it should motivate you to do something about it, which is why go to AmericanConservativeMovement.com. Fill out the form. Jeff calls it our email list. I call it our join list. I want you to be, when you fill out this form, you're joining the American Conservative Movement. Write us a check for $10,000. And no, I'm just kidding. But you are a patriot who's at least interested in what we have to say, and we hope that you will like what we have to say, and we hope that you'll participate, because this nation needs conservatism and patriotism and good old-fashioned constitutionalism, perhaps more than we've needed in our recent history. More so. This is worse. You'd mentioned the Patriot Act earlier. This is much worse than the Patriot Act. Okay, the Patriot Act was about privacy, but very little action that could be taken unless you were involved in something nefarious. With this, with HR 6666, with everything they're pushing, not everything, but a lot of things they're pushing, both at the city and state and national level, much worse. This is draconian. This is going after our rights. This is going after us as free American people. So don't think that this is just, no big deal and it's going to go away when the coronavirus goes away. Because the left, they don't want the coronavirus to go away, period.
If they wanted it to go away,
I'm about to cry.
No, but see, here's the thing, and this is kind of like as we're wrapping it up a little bit too. But if they wanted this to go away, they would have opened up the economy, because the thing is that they know that the way to beat this thing is herd immunity. So if they wanted this to go away, they would have opened up the economy, protected the people that are vulnerable, and would go out, get herd immunity really quickly, and end of story. But the thing is that they are hijacking this for ulterior motives, just like we've seen in the past. But the thing is that the stakes are that much higher now. And again, like you were saying, this is why we need the American Conservative Movement. And again, we've got our organization, and we're trying to do what we can do, right? But ultimately, it's going to take the broader overall conservative group of people in America to actually make our voices heard. We're just a small part of that. We're trying to do everything that we possibly can, reach out to as many people as we possibly can. And I feel like for us, I think knowledge is key. The more that we can get people to understand what's actually going on, how our constitutional rights are being taken away, also like how these draconian measures are being passed, and then what can we do about it? That's really what we're trying to do. We've had the Saving America conferences, and we're going to be putting out more videos, more podcasts, articles, try to get information in your hands on how to actually defeat this leftist big government authoritarian power grab. And then also, like, if this passes, we're going to be trying to figure out, okay, what can we do to either reverse this? What can we do to undermine this? What can we do in order to keep you safe? And so we're going to be doing everything we can, research-wise, information-wise, all that kind of stuff. So again, join the movement. Go to AmericanConservativeMovement.com. Go to the homepage. You can fill out your information. We'll do everything we can to keep you in the loop. And again, we're in this together. This isn't just us trying to build an organization. This is us trying to unify conservatives together across the country, because this is crazy times.
This is crazy times. And that's where we got to leave it, because that's the best pitch. If you recognize that everything around you is crazy and that this doesn't look like the United States of America, that this looks more like communist China, then you're probably with us already. You just haven't signed up yet, so do so now.
Absolutely. So again, go to AmericanConservativeMovement.com. You can also follow us on social media at AmCon Movement. We're on Twitter, Instagram. I believe on Facebook it's American Conservatism, I believe, off the top of my head. So go there. And then if you're listening to us on iTunes or any of the podcast networks or podcast platforms or anything like that, go ahead and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star review. Leave a comment and that sort of thing. It really helps us to be able to get the message out there, and then help us get the message out there. Share this information with your friends. Again, the key is getting information in people's hands, getting people to understand what is actually going on. So help us get the message out there. Again, you are the movement. We're just trying to facilitate and trying to get the information in your hands, but you are the movement. So let's do this together. Let's do everything we can to make sure that Trump hears us, doesn't pass this bill into law, and then if he does, we're going to figure out what we can do from there. So, but definitely, like, subscribe, do all the good stuff. Any final message from you, JD?
Couldn't say it any better than what you just did. So let's end with that one.
Perfect. Sounds good. So again, subscribe, like, all the good stuff, and then stay tuned, because we're going to be putting out more information, more content here on this podcast platform. And so definitely check that out. Stay in the loop. And again, sign up at AmericanConservativeMovement.com. We'll be back sometime soon with some more information for you guys, and we'll see you guys next time.